Hey everyone, Tsetzuko here. Welcome to a special preview of the weekly update. The weekly update is a brand new show coming to the channel in 2021, and we're going to talk about it here in just a second. But first, if you're new here on the channel, hit that subscribe button for more great World of Warcraft coverage, guides, tips, and videos here on the channel. So what is the weekly update? Well, first off, it's a temporary name, hopefully. I'm hoping that you guys out there might have a great name that I can use for this show, because I haven't come up with anything great, and if I don't, then it's going to continue to be the weekly update. But in order to provide a name, you need to know what the show is all about, right? This show is basically a weekly show where I'm going to come to you guys with an edited video and talk about the top news in World of Warcraft, as well as the top news here on the channel and with what I'm doing around the web. So basically, you're going to get a mix of the World of Warcraft and the World of Tsetzuko in a condensed format. Now, I used to do news videos by just getting on, live streaming, going through the stuff on Wowhead, and those could be an hour to 2 hours long. But the goal here is to condense all that down, focus on the big stuff, and just deliver something to you that you can digest in 10 to 30 minutes, depending on how crazy the news is for the week, right? Like a BlizzCon episode might be a little bit longer. Also, on top of that, this is a great opportunity to interact with the community. And each week I'll be showcasing questions that are delivered from my Patreon, as well as highlighting some comments from the past week that have come through on the YouTube videos. So that's what's going on with this show. There's other stuff coming to the channel, and I want to remind you guys to tune in January 4th. It's a Monday, January 4th at 6 p.m. Central Time for what I believe is going to be the biggest, most impactful, and exciting thing coming to the channel in 2021. So be sure to tune in for that. I'm not going to spoil it here. It's a surprise. So let's go ahead and jump into this weekly update. We're going to highlight first, kicking things off with some World of Warcraft news. Now, obviously, the Castle Nathria raid, the first raid of WoW Shadowlands, has released. It's been out for a little while now, and with the release of that raid, we had the start of the race to World First, which has been claimed at this point by Complexity Limit. So they are the first guild to get a World First Mythic Sire Denathrius kill and Castle Nathria clear. So congratulations to them. It's nice to see somebody get the first clear that isn't method. So I'm all for that, and just congratulations to them. Next up, we have the Blizzard and World of Warcraft holiday sales going on. So if you have been looking for like character services mounts, that kind of good stuff, this is probably a great time to hit those up. On the World of Warcraft side of things, we've got 50% off most mounts and pets, as well as 33% off Shadowlands character boost. So most mounts now cost about $12.50, which is still a little bit ridiculously absurd in my opinion, and most pets cost $5, which is a little easier to swallow, I guess. But I'll say this, I'm not opposed to the cash shop in general, because I think that for my part, I'm not someone who has to have everything, right? I think I've purchased one, maybe two things off the cash shop for myself, and like 2 or 3 for my wife as gifts before, but I always do it during this holiday sale when everything's 50% off. So definitely, if you've had your eye on a cash shop mount, like take advantage of this sale in order to get one. But honestly, you know whether you want something or not, right? Don't feel like you got to collect them all. Definitely don't. Along with that, there's the Shadowlands character level boost, which are now $40 instead of $60 while the sale is ongoing. Still ridiculously expensive. I think everything in the cash shop is terribly overpriced. That's just my opinion. And there's also a special bundle that you can pick up called the Woof Pack bundle. And this is actually 65% off the items in the bundle. You get the Vulpine Familiar, which is the mount that looks like the Night Fae transformation ability. Also, Shuzin, the Divine Sentinel, which is a pretty dope dog. Not going to lie. I've been wanting to pick him up, but I'm probably going to pass. And then you also get 2 pets. You get Shadow, who is the fox that can change colors. And you get the Alterac Brew Pup, which is the St. Bernard with the little beer keg on his neck. So the holiday sale is ongoing through January 4th, so you still have roughly a week to take advantage of these sales. And if that's something you're interested in doing, be sure to get there. On the Blizzard side of things, there are additional sales ongoing. There's stuff for basically every Blizzard game. I'm not going to cover everything here, but be sure to check in if you play those other Blizzard games and see what sort of sales they have going on as well. Next up, Activision Blizzard stock has closed at a 27-year all-time high. So basically, this just means that the valuation of their stock and their company has risen to the highest it's ever been. Part of that is likely due to the success and the rapid selling rate of Shadowlands. It's claimed the spot as the quickest selling PC game of all time. And so that, coupled with some of Activision Blizzard's other games doing pretty well, such as their Call of Duty franchise, which has had a lot going on this year, have led to this all-time high in their stock valuation. Now, what that means for the company, what that means for the employees, what that means for World of Warcraft is anyone's guess, because the last time that Activision Blizzard did exceptionally well, they fired like 700 people. So who knows? It could mean absolutely nothing, but for the sake of the employees and for the sake of the games that we play and love, I hope that this is like just a wake-up call for Activision Blizzard to say like, hey, at least in terms of World of Warcraft, like we took the time to do this expansion, to do something different, to not just like, you know, print a template for what a WoW expansion should be. And people seem to really enjoy that. You know, the new lore, the new stuff. I don't know if they'll take all that stuff into account. I don't know if it'll matter, but I really hope that it does. We'll have to see. At the end of the day, I don't think it's going to mean anything, but we'll see what happens. Next up, this is kind of a bit of like World of Warcraft, like side news. In a sense, some of you who have been around for a long time are going to be familiar with Ghostcrawler. He was a designer for Blizzard for a pretty long time, and he left Blizzard to join Riot Games. Riot Games is the creator of League of Legends. And in the past year or two, Riot Games has come out and talked about how they've been developing other new games outside of League of Legends, exploring new genres. They have Legends of Runeterra, which is their card game. They have Teamfight Tactics, their auto battler, Valorant, which is their competitive FPS game. And recently we got a tweet from Ghostcrawler where he basically said that he's been working on an unannounced MMO for Riot Games set in the League of Legends universe. So obviously League of Legends is a huge franchise with a lot of lore and characters and background. It's a great setting for a type of MMO. And so, of course, with the announcement of any new MMORPG, we've obviously got people talking about how, like, oh, you know, Riot is going to compete with Blizzard and et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to give you my take on this, right? First off, they didn't say that they were creating an MMORPG. They just said they were creating an MMO. So I personally don't think that this means that they're creating a direct competitor to World of Warcraft. I also think it's really hard to do that nowadays. You have a couple of big contenders out there that are kind of like keeping pace with World of Warcraft, or in some cases doing better in certain aspects of the game. The big ones that I can think of off the top of my head, obviously Final Fantasy XIV, you've got Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2, and then you've got some other stuff out there that is like still popular, but I don't know if it's at the forefront of the MMORPG like scene. You've got like Black Desert Online, Star Wars The Old Republic is still kicking. The DC one, I forget what that one's called, but that one's still kicking around. So you've got some MMOs out there, right? And the thing about these is they all have like a large scope because they've been out for a while. They have multiple expansions. They've expanded on classes and characters. And I honestly don't think that anything that Riot Games can produce or create is going to match that scope. So even if this MMO gets announced, even if it is really popular, I don't know that it would have the lasting power to compete with these games until it's had a couple of expansions come out as well, if that's the format they're taking. Like I said, it could just be an MMO, right? A massively multiplayer online game, but not necessarily an RPG. So we'll have to see. That being said, I really like the League of Legends universe. I like the lore. I'm excited to see what comes out of this, but my hot take is it's not going to be a WoW competitor, or even if it's going to be an attempt at a WoW competitor, it won't be one until it's had time to produce more content. Also, I just want to slide in here that as Riot's been expanding into other genres of games, I feel like the majority of their efforts have been all right. Not overly amazing, not like standout spectacular. I think that if you had stripped away a lot of the Riot Games hype or the League of Legends universe from some of the games they've created, they would have just landed like right in the middle. So we'll see. MMO is a huge scope. It's a huge thing to do, and we'll just see how it turns out. So like I said, a little bit of side news there. And then finally, the last thing for the WoW news that I wanted to talk about, because it's near and dear to my heart and what I want to do in Shadowlands, there are upcoming nerfs to Tourgas. So this was announced a little bit over a week and a half ago. I believe that most of these have not been implemented yet, but if they have been, please correct me if I'm wrong. I might have missed it. But basically, Tourgas seems to be a little bit too difficult for the average player. And that kind of makes sense to me. I think playing on the beta prior to the big changes they did towards the end, Tourgas was honestly like really easy, in my opinion. It was still fun because you got a lot of anima powers and you got to do cool stuff, but it never really felt all that challenging. During beta, they made some tweaks towards the end where they drastically changed the difficulty levels of Tourgas, and it felt way more challenging. And for me, personally, I felt like I was definitely being challenged, and that if I was being challenged, then chances are it was probably still going to be easy for like top Mythic Plus players and arena players and that kind of stuff who are used to fast reactions and PvP and all that. But that for the average player, it was probably going to be a little bit too difficult. On top of that, one of the things that I noticed during those changes was we didn't get as many anima powers as we did previously, and those anima powers were also generally not as exciting. I don't know. It was like they ramped up the difficulty and pulled down the enjoyment of what makes Tourgas at the same time. I still felt like this was a good move because I would rather the content be challenging and something that I can work up to and work on my skill at as a player, as opposed to it just being something I could breeze through without paying attention to. But I understand why these nerfs are coming. So the key things that they're trying to do with the Tourgas nerfs are they are trying to reduce the length of a Tourgas run and increase the success rate for struggling specs. I definitely understand this. There are some runs in general that feel excessively long, especially depending on what wing you're in. And then also there were times when I was playing in the beta where I would play and get to a certain point where I had to fight a boss, and on one specialization it would be like the hardest freaking thing to do, and on another specialization it would be easy mode, breeze right through it. The big, I think, like offenders in this situation were the enemies that had a ton of casts that you had to interrupt, and if you're playing solo on a class that doesn't have constantly repeatable interrupts, then it was really hard to mitigate the damage that you needed to mitigate because you're the only target, you only have so many interrupts, and if you don't interrupt, then those abilities will absolutely trash you. And honestly, I think that was like one of the worst ones to go up against. So what they've done is they have reduced the difficulty of the layers across the board, which I think is pretty good. As long as the higher end layers end up still being challenging and difficult, I think that it's good to reduce that overall difficulty so that the average player can get through, I would say, like 3 layers at least, like maybe a wee bit of challenge towards the end, but I think you should be able to get through like those first 3 layers without too much difficulty. They've also nerfed health across the board, which I'm also a big fan of that. I think that adding health to enemies in order to increase their difficulty just makes the, thing that you're doing feel like a huge slog. And on top of it feeling slow, I think there's something to be said about being able to cycle through your rotation like once or twice and then something dies, as opposed to having to cycle through that rotation like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Because once you get past like 2 or 4 rotations, I feel like, especially in a solo situation, you really start to see the cracks in the fun of your gameplay because you don't get procs as often, or key abilities that you need to use every 30 to 45 seconds or whatever that have that kind of bursty impact. Now they're on cooldown. And so like it does feel like way more of a slog, not just because it takes longer time to kill the enemy, but because you also like your rotation gets really repetitive and it loses the kind of like shiny bits, I think, that make it fun to play against an enemy, as opposed to just one enemy, if that makes sense. So damage has also been reduced for 4 and 5 player groups. So this is just bringing it down. Hey, we're nerfing the difficulty and stuff of Tourgas. So in return, we have to make sure that if you're in a 4 or 5 person group where you can just plow through everything, we're going to reduce that damage overall just to make sure that you're keeping pace with the 1, 2, and 3 person groups. Major cooldowns now reset at the end of the floor. This is pretty awesome. It means that you can use your heroism or bloodlust or whatever every single floor. This is also really nice because a lot of times what you end up doing in Tourgas is you end up blowing all your cooldowns on the final boss to take them down. And then when you get into the next floor, it feels like you're kind of like gimped, right? And if you get into a tough situation where you make the call and you're like, I need to use this ability in order to get to the boss, then it feels really bad that you don't have that available. So I think this is a really good change, and I think it's going to encourage you to dump all those cooldowns on the boss, but then be able to use them once or twice on the next floor as well before you get to the boss, depending on, the speed and how many players are in your group. Now, Anima Cells will drop more often from rares, and your starting Anima Cells will be stronger than they have been before. So what this means is that as you're killing rares on the floor, you're going to get more Anima Cells that drop, some more options to choose from powers to augment your build, and also your first Anima Cell that you get when you start your run is going to be a higher tier, stronger one, which I think is going to allow you to choose something that you can use as sort of a cornerstone of the build that you're going to play throughout the rest of Tourgas. So this basically, to me, just says like, hey, I can go in, and if I get this power that's like, hey, ability X does this now, then I know going forward in my subsequent Anima power choices, I'm going to be able to pick stuff that helps augment that. And so maybe at the start of a build, going in as a warrior, I can go, oh, okay, I'm going to go for like a shield slam build this run because I got this really powerful shield slam ability as my first pick. Or, hey, I got one for Thunderclap, or I got one for Whirlwind. And I think that's really interesting. I like that change a lot. And I think you need to start the run off with something that's exciting, because if your first thing is like, hey, 5% extra health, it's like, ugh, that doesn't do anything to like motivate me to want to keep playing, right? So good change. There are nerfs to difficult enemies like the Massive Crusher, Tower Sentinel, and Skeletal Remains, and more beyond that. This is great. These enemies are relatively tough on their own, but when you get combinations of them in the same spot, they can be absolutely ridiculous. This was proven to me in the beta when I got a Massive Crusher and a Tower Sentinel in the same grouping and had to try to fight them both at the same time. That was pretty miserable. I don't know how difficult this would be now since the difficulty overall has been lowered, but I guess these were still kind of outliers that needed to be reduced even further. Torments that spawn creature health and damage have been reduced by 50%. Once again, just trying to reduce that length, that slog of the Tourgas runs. The upper reach's health bonus has also been massively reduced to 10%. Same deal. Upper reaches is probably my most hated wing that you could get for Tourgas. It just always feels like a slog. It's really annoying. It's really dark and depressing. And so reducing the health bonus there, very good, very good. Maybe I won't absolutely hate this in the future. So those are the changes that are coming to Tourgas, the majority of them. And overall, I think this is a good step forward. And my big takeaway from this is Blizzard is paying attention to Tourgas, and they didn't just release it from the expansion and abandon it. And that's great because, like I said, Tourgas is where I want to live in this expansion. And so I'm happy to see them paying attention to it, making changes where they think they need to make those changes. And I hope that they'll continue to not just make changes and balance Tourgas moving forward, but continue to add new features, new wings, and that kind of stuff to it as well. So that's going to do it for the World of Warcraft news. Next up, we're talking about channel news. So in the channel news, not a whole lot to talk about here. Mostly I've been taking a break for the holidays to just take some time off and enjoy myself, and also to gather up the energy and resources needed for everything that's kicking off in January. Obviously, this is a special preview of the show that's starting in January, but there are also 2 other major pieces of content coming in January here to the channel to kind of set the slate for what this channel is going to be moving forward. Along with that, I'm going to be revamping the Discord, deleting some channels, updating some channels. I'm also going to be overhauling the Patreon. So the Patreon is going to get a bunch of new and changing perks. So be sure first week of January to check out the Patreon. If you are someone who's interested in add-ons and that kind of stuff, there are going to be some perks there on the Patreon. Also, there are going to be perks available for this show as well, if you decide to support on Patreon. So be sure to check that out. Next, we're going to highlight a couple of comments here on the channel. So the first one we're going to talk about here is from PR23, who says, "Amazing guide. Really appreciate the time you take in covering the basics. Always played Rogue and DPS, started a Pally, and looking to get into tanking. Your guidance is really helpful." I really appreciate that, PR23. I'm happy that you were able to get some help out of my tanking guide, and I hope that moving forward, I can continue to help and update you with new guides for Shadowlands. Next up, we got Jono Carter, who says, "Hi, thank you for your guides. They've helped me a lot. I have just started playing a Brewmaster in Shadowlands. Is there any chance you could update the tanking tutorial, as some of the spells, abilities have either been removed or replaced? Keep up the great content." Well, the answer to your question is yes. All of it's going to take time. I can't release updates for every class all in the same week. So things are just going to get released as I'm able to make them. But there's a new cadence coming up for guide releases in 2021 that I'll talk about in the future, probably the next show here. And with that, there are going to be updates to the Shadowlands guides and all that kind of good stuff as well. So appreciate the comment. Glad I could help. And yes, we are going to be doing updates to these guides moving forward. All right, we're going to do a couple more here. The next one is from Matthew Walker. He says, "Thanks for the effort in making this guide. I'm having trouble with the trigger. How do I make it so the spells I want only show when they have a proc on them?" So this one is pretty straightforward. When you're setting up your weak auras, you want to make sure that if you're looking for the proc, you track the proc, not the spell itself. So for example, if you are looking at Frostbolt, but you only want it when you have Icy Veins up, or you only want it when you have Brain Freeze up, then what you actually want to do is track Brain Freeze and tie that into the spell, not track Frostbolt. So that way you're only having the spell pop up when it also has Brain Freeze. So the way you would do this is set it up like you normally would and go, hey, here's Frostbolt, but then you add an additional trigger that's only show when I also have Brain Freeze. So I'll be going more in depth into that as I continue on with the Weak Auras guide, but that should be a quick and easy answer for you there. Next up, Conrad Cartini says, tried this for my Demon Hunter, but the icons switch when I change specialization. For example, the Demon's Bite icon changes in Opie to Fracture. In this case, that's okay, I guess, but in other cases, it yields unexpected results. Any experience with that? Well, the answer to that question is, in most cases, I've found that the icon switches happen on abilities that make sense. For example, if you're playing like a mage, it'll switch from like Frostbolt to Fireball to whatever. And so normally it makes total sense. And even though I do know exactly what you're talking about, it's not personally bothered me in the past. That being said, if you want to have more control over that, then all you really need to do is create a couple of different slices on the ring and make sure you set the visibility such that they only are there for the specs that you want. So if you're on Demon Hunter and you want Demon's Bite to be here and you want Fracture to be over here, then you need to put Demon's Bite there and make it only show on that specialization, and then Fracture over here and set it to only show on that specialization as well. All right, normally we would be diving into some questions from the Patreon at this point, but that doesn't kick off until January, so we're just going to go ahead and move on to the final segment of the show, which is some Tsetzuko news in general, World of Tsetzuko news. So as some of you know, I have started a second channel recently called Pixel Pathfinder. You could catch a link to that in the description below. And this channel is all about indie games and stuff. So if that's something that you're into, I encourage you to go check out that channel. Recently, I've been releasing my top 21 most anticipated games of 2021 videos over there. So if you're looking for new stuff to get excited about in 2021, you could check those videos out. And I also have a goal to try and hit 250 subscribers by the end of January, which is when my birthday is. So if you want to hook your boy up with a totally free birthday gift and you actually are interested in indie games and stuff like that, please hop on over to that channel and hit that subscribe button for great indie games coverage. And that's really going to do it. That's it for this week's show. I hope you guys enjoy this new format. This one is going to be a little bit longer, hopefully, than some of the ones in the future, just because I'm having to explain the new format, which I'll probably do for a couple more episodes, just in case people don't catch this one. I hope you guys are having a safe and happy holiday season, and you're ready to kick off this brand new year coming up. Lots of exciting things here on the channel. Hopefully lots of exciting and fun things for you as well. I hope you guys are having fun in World of Warcraft. I'm happy to have you here on the channel, and I'll see you on the next video.